During the 6th century BC, a relentlessly ambitious Persian king named Cyrus II conquered the three major powers of the Near East and founded the Achaemenid Empire. Its reach would stretch from the Mediterranean Sea to the Indus River, making it the largest empire the world had ever seen. His ability to conquer vast swaths of land and insistence on treating his subjects with mercy, kindness, and compassion earned him the name Cyrus the Great. Cyrus the Great was born around 600 BC in the ancient region of Persis to the king of Anshon, Cambyses I, and Queen Mendana of Media. Cyrus's parents belonged to the Achaemenid dynasty, which made them descendants of the dynasty's legendary eponymous founder, King Achaemenes, who reigned over the city of Anshon during the late 8th century BC. Cyrus was named after his paternal grandfather, thus making him Cyrus II. His traditional Persian name, Kurosh, meaning sun, was in honor of the celestial body worshipped within Persian culture. According to the 5th century Greek historian Herodotus, Cyrus's maternal grandfather, King Astyages, ruler of the Median Empire, had a dream before his grandson's birth in which water flowed from his pregnant daughter, Mandana's womb, flooding the entirety of his realm. His council of advisors interpreted this dream as a prophecy foretelling that his grandchild would one day overthrow him as ruler. As a precaution, Astyages decided to marry Mandana off to the king of Anshon, Cambyses I, believing that the son of such a weak and insignificant monarch could never supplant his rule. In a subsequent dream, Astyages watched as his empire became overgrown with vines that sprouted from Mandana's womb. This caused Astyages to become exceedingly paranoid, which led him to command his most senior general, Harpagus, to slay the baby upon its birth. Unable to commit such a vile act, Harpagus ordered one of his herdsmen, Mithridates, to kill the baby boy instead. Unbeknownst to Harpagus, Mithridates' wife had just suffered a stillborn birth, and the couple decided to use this as an opportunity to secretly adopt Cyrus and raise him as their own son. When Cyrus was only about 10 years old, he caught the attention of his grandfather, King Astyages, after allegedly hitting the son of a nobleman who refused to obey his orders during a children's game called King and Court. Cyrus and his adoptive father, Mithridates, was summoned by King Astyages to answer for the crime of injuring a nobleman's son. Upon his arrival, Mithridates confessed to deceiving Harpagus a decade earlier and raising Cyrus in secret. Because Cyrus had been discovered playing a game called King and Court, Astyages' advisors were confident that his prophetic dream of the boy one day becoming king had already been fulfilled. So Cyrus was allowed to return to his birth parents in the city of Anshon. In retribution for disobeying his order to kill Cyrus as a baby, Astyages had Harpagus' 13-year-old son chopped into small pieces, boiled, roasted, and prepared to be eaten. He then invited Harpagus to a large banquet where he unknowingly ate his own son. Upon being presented with his son's head, hands, and feet on a platter, Harpagus reacted calmly and proclaimed, "Whatever my king does pleases me." Harpagus proceeded to collect his son's remains, bury them at home, and begin plotting his revenge. Following the death of his father, Cambyses I, in 559 BC, Cyrus was crowned the new king of Anshon. Like many local kings, Cyrus owed allegiance to the Median Empire, which was still ruled by his grandfather, Astyages. Cyrus had no intention of remaining subservient, and hostilities soon broke out, leading Astyages to send his army, led by Harpagus, to attack his grandson in 553 BC. Unbeknownst to Astyages, it was Harpagus who had incited Cyrus to revolt against his grandfather. Harpagus seized this opportunity to exact revenge on Astyages for killing his son by defecting with his army to Cyrus's side. 3 years of brutal war ended with Cyrus capturing the Median Empire's capital of Ecbatana and becoming its new ruler. To appease several of Media's former vassal states, Cyrus spared his grandfather's life and agreed to marry his daughter. Prior to this, Cyrus had already married a Persian noblewoman named Cassandana. The two were said to have been madly in love, having 2 sons and 3 daughters together. For political purposes, Cyrus would go on to take several other wives as well. With Astyages overthrown, Cyrus turned his attention to uniting the twin Achaemenid kingdoms of Parsa and Anshan into Persia proper. Cyrus's conquests of Media and Persia resulted in the founding of the Achaemenid Empire, otherwise known as the First Persian Empire. The king of Lydia, Croesus, attempted to leverage the instability to the east to expand his own territory. He was inclined to do so after consulting the Oracle of Delphi, who informed the king that a great empire would be destroyed should he choose to attack Cyrus. Emboldened by the oracle's prophecy, Croesus marched his army into Cappadocia, an area within Persian territory. This culminated in the Battle of Teria in March of 547 BC, which saw the invading Lydian forces face Cyrus and his Persian army in open battle. The battle resulted in a stalemate, with both sides sustaining heavy casualties. Croesus and his army withdrew to the Lydian capital of Sardis to await the arrival of reinforcements from allies in Sparta, Egypt, and Babylon. He anticipated that the approaching winter would discourage Cyrus from engaging in battle. However, the Persian king made the unorthodox decision to march his army toward the Lydian town of Thymbra in December of 547 BC, where he was met with a force twice the size of his own. Harpagus observed that Lydian horses were frightened by the sight and smell of camels, so he advised Cyrus to surround his archers with the animals. This completely disrupted the Lydian cavalry charge, allowing the Persian archers to wreak havoc on their enemies. Pressing on, Cyrus laid siege to the Lydian capital of Sardis in 546 BC, capturing the city after 14 days of fighting. King Croesus was the wealthiest man in the world at the time, and it is from his name that the modern expression "rich as Croesus" originates. His extreme wealth was evidenced by the fact that Persians began using gold as their primary currency directly following their conquest of Lydia. Some accounts suggest that Croesus was burned alive, while others theorize that he became an advisor to Cyrus. The Persian king was fond of surrounding himself with a diverse group of advisors, even those who he had previously viewed as enemies. To this point, Cyrus once said, "We love ourselves, notwithstanding our faults, and we ought to love our friends in like manner. All men have their flaws, and whoever looks for a friend without imperfections will never find what they seek." When Cyrus ordered a Lydian by the name of Pactyus to bring Croesus's fortune to Persia, Pactyus instead used the gold to hire mercenaries and spark a revolt. The Persian king swiftly crushed Pactyus's uprising, and by reasserting his power, he managed to easily subdue the entirety of Anatolia. Cyrus ordered that Pactyus be brought to him alive, but the traitor's ultimate fate remains unknown. Several kingdoms attempted in vain to resist, others submitted voluntarily to Persian hegemony. The latter witnessed how Cyrus not only defeated the mighty king Astyages, but also how justly and respectfully he treated his subjects. The Persian king once said, "Whenever you can, act as a liberator. Freedom, dignity, wealth. These 3 together constitute the greatest happiness of humanity. If you bequeath all 3 to your people, their love for you will never die." By 540 BC, Cyrus had successfully captured the kingdom of Elam in eastern Mesopotamia and its capital of Susa, which pushed his empire's borders to the doorstep of the Neo-Babylonian Empire. During this time, Babylon was ruled by King Nabonidus, who had seized power via a coup. This power grab made Nabonidus extremely unpopular with the Babylonian people because they perceived it as having angered the city's chief god, Marduk, and began viewing the Persian king as a potential liberator. In 539 BC, Cyrus decisively defeated the Babylonian army at the Battle of Opis, and days later went on to capture Babylon, which at the time was viewed as the greatest city in the world. He accomplished this considerable feat by employing an ingenious strategy to besiege Babylon's 350-foot-high defense walls that were surrounded by a deep moat fed by the Euphrates River. Cyrus ordered that the river be diverted into a nearby canal, allowing his troops to wade through the shallow water and enter the city under the cover of night. Nabonidus quickly surrendered after the successful besieging of the city, making him the final independent king of Babylon and marking an end to thousands of years of Sumerian-Akkadian rule. The fall of Babylon was most notably recorded in a Babylonian text inscribed on a clay tablet, known as the Nabonidus Chronicle. Some scholars view it as a work of propaganda by Babylonian priests of Marduk to vilify King Nabonidus following his attempt to institute the worship of the unpopular moon god Sin. Upon his monumental conquest of Babylon, the Persian king proclaimed, "I am Cyrus, king of the universe, the great king, the powerful king, king of Babylon, king of Sumer and Akkad, king of the 4 quarters of the world." Although Cyrus became the most powerful man on earth, he maintained a high degree of modesty throughout his life, never allowing his kind-hearted nature to be corrupted. He once said, "In my experience, men who respond to good fortune with modesty and kindness are harder to find than those who face adversity with courage." After the capture of Babylon, the Persian king issued an edict recorded on an artifact known as the Cyrus Cylinder, which is praised by scholars as the first human rights charter in history. The Cyrus Cylinder ordered the restoration of temples and religious practices, in addition to allowing all displaced Jews to return to their homelands. This famous policy is recounted in the books of Isaiah and Ezra from the Hebrew Bible, documenting the liberation of Jewish people exiled by Nebuchadnezzar a half-century earlier. The 8th century BC Israelite prophet Isaiah named Cyrus the Messiah, or Anointed One of Yahweh, and presented him as a God-given savior. The Persian king holds the honor of being the only foreigner ever to be hailed as the Messiah of the Jewish people. Not much is known about Cyrus's personal religious beliefs, but he is thought to have been a devout Zoroastrian. Zoroastrianism is a monotheistic ancient Persian religion that worships a deity named Ahura Mazda. The faith was founded by a religious reformer named Zoroaster during the 6th century BC. It is one of the world's oldest religions and is considered to have influenced the development of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Cyrus oversaw and pioneered many groundbreaking strategies on and off the battlefield. The most well-known of these is the establishment of the Immortals, a group of elite soldiers who served dual roles as both heavy infantry units in combat and personal bodyguards to the Persian king. The Immortals' elite training and weaponry made them proficient warriors who were greatly feared by their enemies. The title of Immortals comes from the policy that the soldiers always remained at a strength of 10,000 men, which was achieved by immediately replacing a warrior once wounded, sick, or dead. Rather than dismantling the cultures and customs of those he conquered, Cyrus sought to learn from them and regularly adopted their policies, fashions, and organizational systems. Cyrus's empire was home to 4 capital cities: Pasargadae, Ecbatana, Babylon, and Susa, each of which enjoyed a level of self-governance while still owing fealty to the Persian ruler. The empire's territory was divided into 26 provinces, known as satrapies, with a satrap acting as a kind of governor. State secretaries and generals were appointed to aid with administration and maintain order within the satrapies. This system worked so well that it was adopted by subsequent rulers, including Alexander the Great, who conquered Persia 2 centuries later. Cyrus used the riches he amassed from his conquests to fund his many building projects and campaigns. This allowed him to lower taxes throughout the empire, making him very popular among his subjects. As he once said, "Success always calls for greater generosity, though most people, lost in the darkness of their own egos, treat it as an occasion for greater greed. Collecting wealth is not an end in itself, but only a means for building an empire. Riches would be of little use to us now, except as a means of winning new friends." It is uncertain exactly how Cyrus the Great died, but Herodotus claims that the Persian king met his end at the hands of a nomadic tribe known as the Massagetae. Cyrus offered to marry the ruler of the Massagetae, a warrior queen named Tomarus who had recently become a widow. However, Tomarus refused the marriage proposal and warned the Persian king to leave her territory immediately. Unwilling to do so, Cyrus chose to engage in battle with the queen and her nomadic warriors. Knowing that the Massagetae were unfamiliar with the inebriating effects of alcohol, Cyrus cleverly positioned his weakest soldiers with copious amounts of wine as he hid with his strongest men. The Massagetae, led by Tomarus's only son, wiped out the feeble Persian soldiers. As they proceeded to get drunk from the wine, Cyrus ambushed and massacred the intoxicated Massagetae warriors. As a result, the queen's son was captured and ultimately committed suicide, filling Tomarus with rage. The warrior queen then confronted Cyrus with her own army, ultimately defeating his troops and killing the king in December of 530 BC. Allegedly, Tomarus decapitated Cyrus and mockingly dipped his head in blood, saying, "Drink your fill of blood." After the Persians were allowed to collect their king's body, Cyrus was entombed in the capital city of Pasargadae, surrounded by his beloved gardens and laid to rest inside a golden coffin with a collection of treasures. The inscription on his tomb read, "Whoever you are and wherever you come from, for I know you will come. I am Cyrus, who won the Persians their empire. Do not therefore begrudge me this bit of earth that covers my bones." The valuables within his tomb were looted during the chaos that followed Alexander the Great's invasion of Persia. The Macedonian king made great efforts to restore Cyrus's tomb, which still stands today despite countless wars in the area over the centuries. Alexander was a great admirer of Cyrus the Great, due in large part to Xenophon's biography of the Persian king known as the Cyropaedia, meaning the education of Cyrus. The Greek philosopher praised the Persian king, writing, "He honored his subjects and cared for them as if they were his own children, and they, on their part, revered Cyrus as a father." Cyrus the Great is often described as a philosopher king who is perceived as the ideal leader by the ancient world. He once said, "Brevity is the soul of command. Too much talking suggests desperation on the part of the leader. Speak shortly, decisively, and to the point, and couch your desires in such natural logic that no one can raise objections. Then move on."